explain what that pattern is, because that's the first stage of what I'm implementing around the fruit trees. So the chickens take it down to bare dirt, but then I plant it out with all kinds of wildflowers and perennial herbs and what are called, one of the things that Robert Hart mentioned in his garden, which is a term I want to introduce to you all, is this idea of aromatic pest confusers. Aromatic pest confusers are what he was referring to when he talked about lavender. There are a lot of other highly potent herbs that are effective aromatic pest confusers, like garlic is another one, chives is another one, Egyptian walking onion, a lot of the alliums are aromatic pest confusers, but basically any really potent, high-smelling herb, like lavender, like sage, like mountain mint, chamomile, rue, yeah. So you can get really creative with this stuff. Pretty much as long as it's not grass, it's a good thing to have under a fruit tree. Grass tends to be this uniquely competing vegetative type for fruit trees. It's really not, it's not very compatible. One of the things also that's different, that's important to know as a baseline distinction between what trees like and what vegetables like. Trees like fungal-rich soil, mycelial-rich soil. Vegetables like bacteria-rich soil. And so the way in which we approach what we're doing with soil management is different when we're talking about trees, like fruit trees, than in comparison to what we're talking about when we're looking at vegetables and vegetable production. So the type of compost we're going to make for a vegetable garden is going to be a compost that focuses on high bacteria diversity. The type of compost we're going to make for fruit trees is going to have high fungal diversity and a lot of mycelial growth in it. And that's going to be preferable. Also, things like wood mulch will help as long as the chips aren't too big. One thing to be aware of with wood as a mulch is that it works fine when the sawdust is fairly fine grained, but when some folks may have heard about this, that gardeners are wondering, you know, do wood chips take away more than they give back? If wood chips are too big, they take away for the first season because it takes nitrogen to break down the carbon, so they're taking nitrogen out of the soil to break down. But then by the next year, they're returning that nitrogen plus some. So with big chip, yes, you do lose nitrogen that first year and can potentially stress out your plantings. But with small chip, it starts to break down that year. So it's both a beneficial nutrient reserve and a good mulch. Bigger chip, you want to be a little bit more discretionary with it. Bigger chip is going to work fine for bigger trees because bigger, older trees are going to be able to handle a little bit of a drop and then a resurgence. But a very young new planting is going to be less able to go through that flux and flow of a potential shortage of nutrients while it's trying to get kick-started. Also, this is why aerobic compost teas are particularly important, more around fruit trees than anaerobic. Aerobic is where we actually put something like a fish tank bubbler into a compost tea where we've taken compost and put that in a 5-gallon bucket with rainwater in it and stirred it up, maybe put in about a handful of compost into about 5 gallons of water and stir that up and put a little aerator bubbler through it, let that sit for about 6 hours bubbling, and the next day it has a very high fungal count in it, and that's a good fertilizer for around fruit trees.
That's the aerobic.
That's aerobic. And aerobic is generally now becoming the norm. For a long time, what you saw more in gardening circles was anaerobic teas because people hadn't really gotten into this alchemy around having understood that just by aerating it, it actually increases tenfold the diversity of the microflora that's in it. And so that's why aerobics are really starting to now totally supplant anaerobic.